Drugs, a force that has shaped lives, destroyed families, and led to some of the most shocking crimes in history. From brutal murders to massive heists, from cartel wars to drug-induced madness, the connection between drugs and crime is undeniable. Today, we dive deep into the dark world of crime fueled by addiction, desperation, and the violent underbelly of the drug trade. Each case we cover today is a haunting reminder of how far people will go under the influence of drugs, whether for profit, for power, or simply due to their altered mental state. Stay tuned, because these stories will leave you stunned. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into the world of true crime. The 1970s and 1980s saw Miami transform into a war zone where the streets ran red with blood. With the explosion of the cocaine trade, rival cartels engaged in deadly turf wars, fighting for dominance and flooding the U.S. with massive quantities of narcotics. The city was unprepared for the brutality that followed. In the late 70s, Miami became a key entry point for cocaine coming from Colombia, primarily controlled by the infamous Medellin and Cali cartels. The city, once known for its beaches and nightlife, became synonymous with drug-fueled violence, attracting both local thugs and international criminals. One of the most infamous moments in the Miami cocaine wars was the 1979 Dadeland Mall massacre. In broad daylight, hitmen armed with automatic weapons stormed a liquor store, spraying bullets and killing 2 men instantly. The attack was orchestrated by assassins working for the Medellin cartel, marking the beginning of an era of drug-fueled terror. Murders became a daily occurrence, and Miami's homicide rate tripled. The violence intensified as drug lords fought for control over the lucrative market, and street gangs started to emerge. The most notorious figure of this era was Griselda Blanco, a woman with a reputation for ruthlessness. Known as the Black Widow, Blanco orchestrated the murders of numerous individuals, including her own lovers, to secure her power. Under her reign, over 200 people were killed in cold blood. As the cartel wars raged on, law enforcement found themselves battling not just the criminals, but the systemic corruption that allowed these drug empires to flourish. Many police officers, from local patrolmen to high-ranking officials, were bribed to turn a blind eye to the shipments of drugs passing through their streets. Others were even complicit in helping cartels by providing inside information and protection. Blanco's empire finally came crashing down in the 1980s after a series of arrests and increased law enforcement pressure. However, the scars of the Miami cocaine wars remained long after her arrest. The city's reputation as a glamorous paradise was forever tainted by the bloodshed. The influence of the drug wars was so profound that it found its way into popular media, with movies like Scarface immortalizing the fear and chaos of the era. But even after Blanco's capture, the drug trade in Miami didn't end. The cartels continued to control the streets, and Miami remained a hub of the drug trade, influencing everything from pop culture to the day-to-day lives of its citizens. On July 13, 1966, Richard Speck committed one of the most horrifying crimes in American history. Under the influence of alcohol and a cocktail of drugs, including amphetamines and barbiturates, Speck broke into a dormitory for student nurses in Chicago. For hours, he terrorized his victims, binding them and executing them one by one. 8 women were brutally raped and murdered that night. The only survivor, Corazon Amureo, managed to hide under a bed and later testified against him. The brutality of the killings sent shockwaves through the nation, and the fact that it occurred in a place that was supposed to be a safe haven made it all the more chilling. Speck's behavior during the attack was erratic and violent. He showed no remorse, and his drug-induced haze seemed to fuel his rage, making him incapable of empathy. When Speck was finally captured, he claimed to have no memory of the killings, citing his intoxication as the reason behind his actions. The horror of the murders shocked the nation, but the chilling twist came years later, when a notorious prison video surfaced. In the footage, Speck was seen partying with other inmates, using drugs, and bragging about his gruesome crime. The fact that someone like him could still have access to narcotics in prison raised serious concerns about prison corruption and the smuggling of substances behind bars. Speck's case remains one of the most chilling examples of how drug use can fuel unimaginable violence. His rampage became a cautionary tale about the dangers of substance abuse, particularly when combined with the dark recesses of the human psyche.
Part 5 of Richard Speck Speaks. How could this man have murdered 8 innocent young women and with no apparent reason? Tonight, Bill takes you inside the mind of a killer. Bill?
We've seen disgusting and outrageous things over the last 4 nights and raised a lot of questions. The legislature now wants to know how it could happen in an Illinois prison. Tonight, we want to know how it could happen at all. We've gone through the Speck video and edited some of his comments, which might shed some light on the mind of a killer.
Where was you born at, Richard?
Where was I born?
Yeah.
Kirkwood, Illinois.
When was you born?
December 6, 1941.
Is it true that you was born a day before Pearl Harbor?
Right out of Fort, all hell broke loose next day. And stopped split.
All hell broke loose. The story of Richard Speck's life. Even etched on his arm, the infamous Born to Raise Hell tattoo, the very instrument of Speck's capture. In his rambling 2-hour video, Speck touches on many topics, foremost among them his twisted view of women.
Do you like women?
Yeah, I like them in their place.
In their place. That was Speck's view of women. A growing hatred that resulted in the gruesome slaughter of 8 young nurses. Probe deeper into Speck's past, and his feelings toward women center on his mother.
You was mama's boy, huh?
Yeah, every 2 weeks is down here. When my mother died, I stopped all my business. I've cried one time since I've been locked up on this case when I found out my mother died.
The 2007 murder of British student Meredith Kercher in Perugia, Italy, remains one of the most debated crimes in modern history. The case was filled with twists and turns, misinformation, and speculation. At first, Amanda Knox and Rafael Solicito were convicted of the crime, but forensic evidence later pointed to Rudy Gede, a known drug dealer and addict. On the night of the murder, Gede was reportedly high on cocaine and marijuana. His erratic behavior, combined with drug-induced aggression, played a role in the brutal attack. Meredith Kercher was found with multiple stab wounds, and the crime scene indicated a violent struggle. Gede's drug use seemed to have triggered an uncharacteristic surge of violence that led to her tragic death. While Knox and Solicito were later exonerated, the lingering question remains: how much did Gede's drug use contribute to the brutal nature of the crime? His actions highlighted the role that drugs can play in escalating otherwise avoidable violence. The case also pointed to the blurred lines between substance abuse and criminal intent. The murder sparked international debates not just about drugs, but about the justice system itself. The media sensationalized the case, turning it into a global spectacle and influencing the investigation and public perception. Drug use in this case didn't just impact the criminal, but also distorted the investigation, clouding the truth and making it harder to discern the real story. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the notorious leader of the Sinaloa Cartel, is one of the most infamous drug lords in history. Over the span of decades, he built a criminal empire that spanned across the globe, controlling major drug shipments into the U.S., Europe, and beyond. His cartel was involved in the trafficking of various illicit substances, including cocaine and heroin, and its operations earned Guzman billions of dollars. One of the most horrifying events linked to his cartel was the 2010 massacre in Tamaulipas, where 72 migrants were killed after refusing to work as drug couriers. This act of violence was a brutal reminder of the cartel's control over the region and its willingness to resort to extreme measures to maintain power. Despite his arrests and daring prison escapes, El Chapo's influence remained far-reaching. His ability to bribe officials and navigate the criminal world made him nearly untouchable for years. It wasn't until 2017 that he was finally extradited to the United States to face trial. However, even with his capture, the Sinaloa Cartel remains one of the most powerful and dangerous drug syndicates in the world. El Chapo's story is a stark example of the lengths to which some will go to control the illegal drug trade, and it highlights the devastating consequences of the ongoing demand for illicit substances. These cases illustrate the tragic impact of drugs on individuals and society at large. From cartel violence to bizarre, isolated incidents, the link between substance abuse and crime is undeniable. These chilling stories serve as a stark reminder of the damage that can be caused by drugs, not only to the people involved, but also to entire communities. The question remains, how far will individuals and organizations go when faced with addiction, power, and greed? And how can we, as a society, address these challenges through prevention, treatment, and rehabilitation? What are your thoughts on these cases? Do you think stricter drug laws are the answer, or is there a need for a broader approach to tackle addiction and its consequences? If you found this content insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Stay informed, stay safe, and remember, sometimes the most dangerous crimes are the ones hidden in plain sight.